Hi, how's it going? I'm Marlene, and thanks for wandering on by. So I am excited today to make this video and talk to you about tarot buzzwords. I think that's what this video is going to be called. So what I wanted to do, and you might see, I'm looking down in my notes. I made some extensive notes on some of these things at the beginning, but then I might just be going off the cuff later on. I wanted to create like a fun and informative kind of primer for everybody out there, or especially for people that are like me that are a little bit new to tarot and the tarot community here on YouTube, so that you can get familiarized with like these tarot buzzwords that you might be hearing around different places. And these are like the words and phrases that I keep hearing that are like jargon that's in context of the tarot. I tried to go with words that I hear most often, and these are the terms and phrases that get used frequently around the tarot spheres, like I said, especially here on YouTube and some other social media circles. So like, these words might not be just exclusive to the practice of tarot, but this, like in this video, what I'm attempting to do is to define them in relation to the tarot so that you can get a bit of a crash course, like all in one place. So when I was first starting out, I would have loved to have something like this that kind of had all of these different words that you hear over and over. And kind of an idea of like what those things mean. And I've divided them up into a few categories, and maybe I'll get fancy and figure out how to put, you know, the words down here at the bottom of my video. We'll see if I can manage to do that. We're gonna go ahead and get into the first category of tarot buzzwords. First category of tarot buzzwords is specific to the discussion of tarot via this medium, so videos on YouTube. And I'm gonna read this first one to you because I think it's kind of hilarious. The first word is disclaimer. So this is my first buzzword, and I'm also going to be giving a disclaimer about this video. Isn't it fun that it has a dual purpose like that? So the definition of disclaimer is a statement that denies something, especially responsibility. So this video is by no means a comprehensive glossary of tarot terms. This is simply my own relative beginner's guide to common vocabulary that I've found that surrounds the practice of reading tarot cards. Much of this will be playful and tongue-in-cheek, so please don't consider my list exhaustive. As an exhaustive one. If you disagree with my definitions, that's totally cool. I'd love to hear your take, and I'd love for you to share that with me. This video is mostly geared towards people that are new to tarot, but I would love to hear veteran tarot readers and tarot tubers. I'll define that word later. But I'd love to hear your take, or if I missed anything, I'd love you to add along. All right, so now to define this buzzword disclaimer in the context of tarot. It's a bit of a controversial topic across the tarot channels that I watch. Opinions range from those who want a movement towards less disclaimers, towards others who think that there aren't enough disclaimers. It's a hot topic, basically. And it happens more often than not when a channel's host is about to present their opinion about or review a tarot deck. So personally, that's when those disclaimers come about. Before they're going to talk about a tarot deck, they make disclaimers about what they're about to say. But you know, I have mixed feelings about disclaimers. You know, I don't want to offend anyone, and I do think that words matter and that we need to be careful with language. But on the other hand, I think there's definitely a space for critical interpretation of artwork and other choices that creators make in tarot decks. Okay, all right, let's move on to the next one. So tarot tube. Well, you're here. You made it. This is it. This is Tarot Tube. No, I mean, I'm excited to have joined and like to feel like I'm part of the Tarot Tube community. My channel is definitely not the entirety of Tarot Tube. I'm just teeny. But Tarot Tube is the name that has been affectionately used for those channels that primarily discuss all things tarot. So I don't know who coined it. I know that like there are other topics on YouTube that get like affectionate names like that, like, you know, booktube or, you know, witchy tube or teacher tube, things like that you know, are surrounding that particular topic. So Tarot Tube, I'm not sure how that came about. But you know, it's more than a hobby. For most of the tarot tubers that I chat with, it's a passion, and I feel the same way. So many people have connected. It's like clear to me when I watched tarot tubers that they've connected with one another, and I've made friends across Tarot Tube as well. It's a thriving community, and I'm sure that I'm only aware of a small pocket of Tarot Tube because there are billions of YouTube channels out there, and a lot that I have not seen yet. So yeah, so that is the definition, your definition for Tarot Tube. So let's talk about some words about like the types of videos that you might watch on Tarot Tube. So a flip through. And that is, so I want to distinguish between some of these. So a flip through, in my opinion, refers to a video that is exactly that. It's simply a flip through of the cards in that particular deck. And this usually consists of a silence or maybe some music played over top of the images, but there is no commentary or no review of the deck, just straight flipping the cards one by one and the images on them. So then that takes us to another term called a walkthrough. So a walkthrough is a longer, more involved flip through of a tarot deck. So typically it has some commentary or first impressions of that tarot deck or oracle deck. Usually the channel host will walk through each card, giving a few words of reaction or review of that particular image and interpretation. They don't typically comment on every single card. So while it's longer than a flip through and has commentary and some more substance, you know, than a flip through, it's not a full in-depth study of a deck. So that's how I distinguish between what a flip through is and what a walkthrough is. And then that leads us on to the next one, is a deep dive. So like all of these terms are really good when you're searching, when you want to learn more about a particular deck. If you know you just want to see the cards, or you want to see the cards with a little bit of commentary, then you know to search for a flip through of something versus a walk through of something. And then now actually I should probably be going this way. A flip through, a walk through, and then like a deep dive. So a deep dive is, for me, synonymous with that name. It's an in-depth analysis of that deck. And it can be made as a in real time study of each card as the host is first experiencing it. So they might be walking through the deck and it is a deep dive because they spend more time going in depth of their reactions to the cards. Or it can be a discussion of the deck, so more like in review. And I like to call it a deep dive rather than a review. But anyway, that's just my, you know, my preference and usually kind of what I find. But if it's a deep dive, it can be happening in real time, or it can be a discussion of the deck after the host has spent some time working with the deck and gives their feedback about the experience of working with the deck. So yeah, so flip through, walk through, deep dive. Okay, so those are kind of live in that same kind of family of like the types of videos on in related like in the sphere of like review, or when you're trying to purchase, you know, when you're looking to purchase or look at what somebody else thinks of a deck you might already own. Okay, so moving on, we have VR or hashtag. So a hashtag you may be familiar with across different social media platforms. Basically a hashtag, and for those of you that are a little older like myself and you need this primer, a hashtag is just an easier way to search for a title or a phrase, okay? So just anybody that has, you know, created a title or a phrase, if you put hashtag, you know, tarot tube, or hashtag, what was one of the most popular ones, only 10 decks. So hashtag only 10 decks, and you'll find all the videos related to that specific topic. So that's a hashtag. A VR, it stands for video response. And so those two things get combined when a channel host creates a hashtag and someone else creates a video response to that hashtag. So they can have actual questions and prompts that the initial creator of said hashtag answered. A popular one recently, like I said, was only 10 decks. I mean, maybe that's a little bit older now. There's also 7 decks for 7 Deadly Sins. That was started by Sylvain at Sylvain's 7 Deadly Sins. So that one has prompts for each of the 7 sins. So some of these hashtags have prompts for you to video respond in answer to. And some hashtags are just a call out for any type of deck to show. So for example, Lisa Pepez started one called My Adorable Decks, just to show and tell all her adorable decks. And so then anyone who did a VR video response to that, they weren't answering specific prompted questions, but they were just showing off their adorable decks too. So that's how that works. And then sometimes an unasked for VR happens. And so if a particular channel host creates the hashtag, that means that they're asking for a potential video response. They want, or they might even say it in the video themselves, that they want, you know, video responses to it. And sometimes we just get really excited about what each other is talking about, and an unasked for video response happens. So sometimes it's welcome, and sometimes I think maybe it's controversial as well, because you never know how it will be received by the host. I mean, they may not even see it. I don't know, who knows, but like that thing is a thing that happens sometimes. That was category 1, and that is all the things that I, you know, just kind of bunched together that are related to YouTube, tarot on YouTube. And now we're going to move on to the next category. Category number 2 is around the purchasing and collecting of tarot decks. First, let's talk about what we call the amount of tarot and oracle decks that we have. So this is a kind of a hot topic. I've mentioned this before, I think, how in a live stream somewhere I saw someone talk about how they prefer to call their tarot deck collection a library, just because of the way that in which they interact with it. So the definition of a deck collection means that perhaps while you use those decks and they're working decks for you, that some of them may be purchased or you have in your possession for a reason other than use. So these are collector's items where they are going to be placed somewhere and not worked with. And so I do have some decks that fit that category in my in my tarot library collection, because they are decks that I inherited, and I'll link below. The Tarot Generation Gap is the video that I show off some of those, and they are not working decks for me. So I inherited them from my mother-in-law, and they hang out in a special place, and I don't use them to read. And so people have many different reasons why they would collect. I mean, you know, any like reasons why you would collect anything, you know, because of its value, for resale, sentimental reasons, whatever it may be. So for me, that distinguishes something that's a collection is something that you may not use or work with often. It's kind of like set aside to be pristine and have its own like special, you know, place for whatever reason you may have. Whereas a tarot library, which is the term I want to like really adopt into my tarot vocabulary, tarot vernacular, is a library, much like an actual book library, means that you have a collection of decks that you rotate through, that you use, you know, that you are using and working with, and then putting back aside, and then, you know, checking out the others weekly, monthly, or however. Okay, so that's how I see the difference between collection and library. And if there's other terms floating around there, let me know. I'd like to know if there's something else that somebody, you know, collection, library, things like that. So another word that you may hear around is a haul. And so this is actually kind of related to videos too. But you can see pictures of people's tarot hauls, tarot and oracle deck hauls. So a haul is basically just a showing off of a bunch of decks that you have recently acquired or purchased. And that's a haul. And there's lots and lots of videos in this category. The next few words are about the replacing or the moving along, or I hate to say get rid of. That's the one that I wouldn't say. But like when your tarot decks are leaving your home and heading somewhere else, these are the words around that. So people use the word cull when they're talking about like refining their particular collection or library. And so they're selecting which tarot decks or oracle decks are going to stay or go. So that's the process of doing that, would be a cull or culling your collection. And for me, the word cull, it has a lot to do with selection. And on the flip side of that, you can say curating. So when you're curating your tarot collection or library, that more implies, like on the other side of things that I was saying, like acquiring tarot decks. So if you're curating or culling, you might be thinking about you're selectively choosing what is coming in and what is going out in terms of your library. And then here are some other words around this topic. So declutter, and this one is another controversial word that some people are offended by, people saying declutter, because tarot decks, in their opinion, tarot decks are not clutter. And other people, say, at the end of the day, it's like, it's pieces of paper, and I'm more in that camp of, more of the camp of like, these are, this is paper. And the word declutter doesn't offend me at all. But declutter just means like you're cleaning up your stuff and you're cleaning up your tarot decks. You are moving things out, and that's decluttering. So it also might not have to do with actually selling or moving on your tarot decks to someplace else. It might just mean literally like cleaning out your cupboard, cleaning out your shelves, decluttering your space, like rearranging from one month to the next, or a couple, like spring cleaning type thing. So decluttering for me can kind of be an umbrella term for a lot of things, but I do think that most people use it in terms of like making choices about what tarot and oracle decks are going to be leaving their collection because they're decluttering and moving them along. Okay, and in that same vein, the word rehome gets used a lot, and I think that's a nice one. I like that. I think most of us that really love our tarot decks, you know, even though we do stay, like, we'll recognize that it's, you know, that's paper. They are like, they're special to us for working and using them and what we, you know, what we get out of the tarot. So when you've worked with the deck for a long time, and are going to rehome it, or even something that you purchased and it didn't seem to be the right fit of a tarot deck for you, you want to give it a good home to somebody who you know will work with it or enjoy it or prefer it, you know, more than you have. So that word rehome or rehoming gets used a lot in terms of selling or giving away or moving on your tarot deck out of your home and into somebody else's. And another, so here's another term. So I said haul, and this word is anti-haul. So an anti-haul is, and this is interesting because I mean, for me, I get this mostly from Lisa Pepez, and anti-haul is not just a moving along. I mean, because you could be moving along, rehoming, decluttering, culling and curating all of the above in an anti-haul, all your through your collection library of tarot decks and oracle decks. But an anti-haul also suggests that along with maybe looking at what you already have in your home, that you are looking at what's up and coming, what new decks are being released, like certain things that are out there, things that maybe, you know, friends have mentioned that you are not going to bring into your collection. So it may be like there's a pre-order, a Kickstarter, something, you know, that's really getting mentioned a lot in your tarot Facebook groups or on TarotTube or amongst your friends, and you are anti-hauling that particular deck if you're deciding that you're not going to purchase it. And the last word surrounding this idea of the purchasing and collecting of tarot that I've come across is purgatory drawer or purgatory space or purgatory box. And so purgatory is a place that's limbo. And in Catholicism that I happen to know about, purgatory is where souls go if they're not in going to heaven or going to hell. So it's a limbo space that they don't have a destination yet. So purgatory drawers and boxes. So when you hear folks talking about how this particular deck is right now in their purgatory box, that means that they've placed it there because they're uncertain about its fate. They don't know whether it's going to come back into rotation in their library of tarot decks, or if they're going to then make the decision to rehome that particular deck. So that's a purgatory place or space. And now let's move on to the next category, which has to do with the practice of tarot, the actual practice of reading the cards. These are the words that have to do with what having a tarot or having a tarot practice. So let's talk about that in general. So what does it mean to have a tarot practice? So this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be a professional tarot reader to have a tarot practice. It does not necessarily mean that you have to have a very solidly defined routine around the tarot. Some people do both of those things. Some people have a very eclectic or not routine type of tarot practice. In my mind, a tarot practice is just how you personally work with your tarot cards and decks. And if you have developed a routine or a system or a way that you organize how you read the cards, then it might be a little bit more of a defined practice, whether it's, you might term it things like a seasonal practice. So you might have a specific type of reading that you do in, around the springtime, summer, winter, things like that. You might have a specific tarot practice that has to do with the moon phases. So I do. So like a tarot reading that you do at the full moon, a tarot reading that you do at the new moon. Some of you may have daily practices that you do every morning or every evening. So for me, practice just means what it looks like for you when you're working with the cards, and you may be reading for yourself or others. So don't think, and this is like my, I guess one of the best pieces of advice, even as a newbie tarot reader, that I can give to you is that you don't have to have anything that is like specific or even like well thought out to say that it's a tarot practice, because it is personal and it is yours, and you're allowed to define it however the hell you want. All right, moving on. So in the practice of tarot, for those of you like me who might be new to some of these things may be in the sphere of witchcraft that I'm not, particularly familiar with as well, or that things that might be kind of borrowed and pulled and pieced together for various different like spiritual practices as well. And so I'm not here to define anything like that's specific to witchcraft or specific to a spiritual practice. I probably should have put this in my disclaimer, but basically I'm just talking about this word in relationship to the tarot and how I've defined it so that I feel comfortable with it in my own tarot practice. So here's the word. The word is work. So it's just interesting to me, like obviously I know what the word work means, but like how we use that term in context to the tarot. So it's like fill in the blank work. So, whatever it may be that you are trying to work, yep, that's the word, work with or work through, it gets termed something work, and then you use the tarot to help you with that particular thing. So we have a bunch of different ones that I've heard, and tell me if you know more that I've missed or that are important to you. But so number one of the biggest ones I hear all the time is shadow work. And this term is controversial. It has different definitions you'll hear from different people. The term is though originated through Carl Jung. And basically in the way that I understand what shadow work is that shadow work is bringing to the surface things that live in your unconscious or subconscious mind. I say unconscious mind, okay? So something that lives within your in your unconscious, but it's not, you're bringing it to your conscious mind, okay? So it doesn't necessarily mean it's something bad or, traumatic or negative even. It just means that it's something that you're not aware of in your conscious mind that you are bringing to the surface. And so that to me is what shadow work is. And that's a very blanket, very kind of surface level definition. Anyway, the word is work. Shadow work is one. Inner child work is another. So that means like working with your inner child. Inner child work, deity work is another one. Energy work is another. And some of these, like I said, are related specific to spiritual practices or some witchcraft practices, which I am definitely not any kind of expert on. So I'm not going to go into any kind of detail there. But yeah, so whenever you hear the word something work, that's what it means. It means that you are involved in a process of this particular topic or spiritual practice or psychological type of thing, that you are using your tarot practice, your tarot readings to help you work through. Next word in the practice of tarot is the word, just the word energy in general. So for me, learning about tarot and getting into reading tarot, the word energy took on a whole new meaning for me as well. There are some folks that talk very specifically about the energy that they get from a particular card. And that was new to me. That was something that I wasn't, that I'm kind of like taking in and processing and seeing how I feel about it. There's certainly things that I feel when I look at artwork. Like, I'm still not sure. So like this word is kind of nebulous for me still, but I will, I'm doing my best to define it for you. The word energy can take on so many different types of meanings because of all that the tarot kind of encompasses and can, has in it already, or what led you to it, or where you branch out from it. So like the word energy, and I started just from the place of defining energy as the way that I've heard some folks talk about the thing that radiates from that card that gives you more than just a like rote meaning of it. That's what I think energy, what folks I've seen talk about it, that's what I think they mean. They're talking about, and when they're defining energy, they're talking about something that is radiating from that card or the group of cards that have landed in your reading, that kind of pulsates and radiates out towards you to give you an answer, a message. So a couple more words that are fun, that I think are a little bit less, serious than the ones that we've talked about, and are just kind of fun words that I've heard that I've had to figure out definitions for as I've been learning along my tarot journey. So one of those words is jumpers. So if you hear somebody talk about a jumper, that means a particular card as you're shuffling that kind of pops out, and folks call those cards jumpers, and some people use when a card jumps out, that's what they use for their particular reading, and some people don't. I personally don't. Some people only read with jumpers. So they'll shuffle until a card kind of flies out, pops out, and then they'll use that as only use jumpers in their reading. Another word is stalkers. And so stalkers are when you get the same card repeatedly in a short period of time. So we would call that a stalker card because it's, stalking you several times in a few days, couple weeks, or even across, a month or two. Okay, and then spread. Tarot spread is literally how you put the cards on the table or the floor or the couch or wherever you're laying your cards down. That's what it is. Now, I'll go into a little bit more detail for some of you that are really newbies. There are tarot spreads that have defined positions. The most common one that you'll probably find in every single tarot book or tarot guidebook is past, present, and future. So position number one would be the past. Position number two in the middle would be present, and then position on the other side would be future. So when people are talking about tarot spreads, they're mostly talking about these spreads that have defined positions. You can look them up on Instagram. Lots and lots of people do beautiful spreads that you can borrow from to use yourself. There are books of tarot spreads. There are lots of lovely tarot tubers that share how their own spreads that they've created. My buddy Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, she has, she's amazing with tarot spreads, and she shares them publicly. We're talking about tarot spreads. For the most part, people are talking about specific you know, like a certain number of cards, and each card has a particular position that you put it on the table and a particular word or key phrase that goes along with that position. Now, there are, like, a spread doesn't have to be that way as well. You can have just a free form, throw the cards down, and I call it free form spreads. But literally a spread is just how the cards land on the place where you're reading them. These are just a couple more things about the practice of tarot. Let me start with the first one. So deck pairings, or perfect pairs, or pairing your decks. Deck pairings is 2 decks. Usually when people are talking about deck pairings, they're talking about pairing a tarot deck with an oracle deck. So a tarot deck of the, you know, is the 78 card system, and an oracle deck is something that is not tarot. That's how I define it. But in any case, a deck pairing, typically people are talking about pairing oracle decks with tarot and how they go together by combining. They have like energies we defined already that work together, or aesthetically they work together, or you're just experimenting with 2 decks and you're working with them together. So I mentioned her just now as well when I talked about spreads, but Dawn Michelle at Boho Tarot is amazing at this topic, and she has a wealth of different deck pairings, and you can see, I'll link some of my favorites as well. But yeah, like, I learned about this specifically from Dawn Michelle, and it's cool. It's so much fun, and I'm so glad that I did, because it is really fun to play with your cards in this way and like try things out. Now you don't have to pair only oracle with tarot. You can pair 2 oracle decks. You can pair 2 tarot decks if you want. You can pair, you know, playing cards. You can, you know, whatever you want to do. But a deck pairing, that's what, if you see that term going around, that's what most people mean when they're talking about deck pairings. And then, so that leads to deck families. And I love saying that way, deck families, because so this means working with more than 2 tarot and oracle or other divination cards. So this means you can do 2 tarot, 1 oracle, and using different spreads, whether they're defined positional spreads or more freeform spreads. That's what people mean when they're talking about deck families. So for me, deck pairings is just 2, and a deck family is 2 or more than 2 decks at a time. All right, so we're in the home stretch here, and these words fall under the category of, you know, the practice of tarot, working directly with your cards, but these are like the literal physical ways that you work with, or things that you do like physically with your cards. So under the umbrella of the term deck modding, what that means is deck modification. Deck modification means anything that you do to change the physical appearance of your deck. So it's gonna look different once you've altered it than it did the way that it was first originally printed or published. And so I have a couple of examples of these things for you. Start with talking about something called edging. So if you don't know, and again, I'm talking to those newbies out there who may have no idea what these things are and will be pleased to have a place where everything kind of lands. So edging means when you color the sides of a deck. And this is the Liminal Spirits. That's the back. This is the Liminal Spirits Oracle that I edged in a bunch of different rainbow colors. So I colored along all the edges and made a rainbow colored deck. I don't always do different colors. I'll show you another one. This is the Magical Herb Oracle And these are the edges, which I just colored in a brown. I'm not fancy. I usually use Sharpie or Crayola. And the other thing is, so that is edging, and something else that you can do to your card would be to trim. So this is the Tarot of the Magical Forest. Cute, right? And this deck, I cut off the entire, all the borders. See, I didn't do a super great job here. But I cut off all the borders of it straight down to the artwork. So this is trimming a deck. When you cut it down, when you cut anything off of the deck, that is what we call trimming. I mean, you know, it's pretty straightforward, but just in case you want to know the differences. And here's another one I can show you that is modified in a little bit of a different way. This is the Tarot of Light. And with this deck, I did not cut off all the borders entirely. I kept the titles at the bottom. And see, like, I'm not the best. There's still, like, you can see some of the borderline there. But, you know, I mean, hey, I thought it was pretty good. And basically, people, or at least I do, I modify, edge, and I edge for aesthetic purposes, and but I trim decks because I have teeny tiny baby hands. And when decks are really big, they're just unruly and hard for me to work with. That's why I did the Tarot of Light. The Tarot of the Magical Forest got chopped and edged because, yeah, I edged it in this light blue kind of color. I don't know if you can tell, it matches a little bit with the backs. That was just all purely for aesthetic reasons. Okay, and the last bit that we have to discuss is talking about shuffling. I'm not sure that everybody agrees on them, but I call, for me, there's 3 different main ways that you shuffle cards. And number 1 is overhand shuffle. So I'll do that right here. So this is overhand shuffling. Hand shuffling is when you just hand over hand the cards. That's overhand shuffling. I'm just gonna do a quick example of what a riffle shuffle is. This action is what we call riffle shuffling. And this action is what we call bridge shuffling. This action is what we call riffle to bridge, okay? Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was my version of a tarot primer that I created here for you, of the words that kind of tripped me up along the way as I was first learning, and I wanted to share that with you and put them all in one place so that you would have a great place to reference when you were unsure about what these things mean. Thanks for sticking around and wandering on by. I hope you all have a beautiful, wonderful day.